People in general are very gracious and kind around the village. I would be walking down the street and pass some older woman who would hand me a bag of potatoes or something.
Konnichiwa, my friends. If you move to a small coastal village in Japan, you might be given random bags of vegetables, like my guest today, Bee Littlefield. She is an American who has lived in Japan for 14 years. We talk about what it's like to live in Japan and her new cozy mystery book, so stick around. Welcome to Jacqui Just Chatters. Thank you for joining me. I'm your hostess, Jacqui Lents, and I'm trying to make the world a little better, one story at a time. Whimsical episodes come out every other Tuesday. What's your story? If you've got one, reach out via my website. Now let's get chatting. And we are back. Today I'm hanging out with the sensational author and my friend, Bee Littlefield. She is the author of Clueless at the Coffee Station, the first in a new cozy mystery series. She's originally from Michigan, but has lived in Japan for 14 years. Welcome to Jacqui Just Chatters, Bee.
Thank you for having me.
This is super exciting. We've known each other for so long, and I love the fact that I finally get to have you on to talk about your book. I've been waiting for this moment.
Happy to be here.
Tell us a little bit about you. So if you're at some kind of function, you're meeting somebody for the first time, what do you tell them about yourself?
It's been a while since I've been at a function. Let's see. My hobbies are reading, a variety of genres, writing, of course. I like baking and crafty stuff like knitting, and I used to take a weaving class, things like
Oh,
that.
wow.
Yeah, I haven't been doing much of that lately, but historically, I also like traveling. I haven't done much of that lately either, but yeah, those are my main hobbies.
Do you have a baking specialty? This is your go-to thing.
I have a carrot muffin recipe, which actually in my book, the main character makes a similar recipe that I used to make at a coffee shop that I worked at pretty regularly, and they were a hit. And those are my go-to muffins that I make at home too. They have carrots and apple and lots of different stuff in them. So I feel like my kids are eating a little bit more than flour and sugar.
So it's very gourmet muffin.
I don't know if I would call them gourmet, but they're carroty.
I want to know if you're going into a situation where you don't know a lot of the people there, do you wait for people to come and talk to you? Or are you one of those that you're going to go up to a stranger and start the conversation?
Oh, I don't know that I would go up to a stranger and start a conversation. Yeah, I might wait for people to talk to me generally. It depends on how the function is set up, but if we're sitting at a table together, I would strike up a conversation with the people around me, probably.
In Japan, what is the common way of dealing with that, culturally? Is it acceptable to go up to a stranger and start a conversation, or would they be like, whoa, who are you and what are you doing?
It is not common to go up to strangers and start conversations, but people have done that to me. There's all kinds everywhere. If we were all at a some sort of meeting or party or dinner, then that of course would be acceptable to walk up to people and start chatting with them. But the communication style is pretty different here. That's one of the things that's taken a lot of getting used to. For example, once I went on a trip to Vietnam with my friend who is Japanese. And while we were there, we were on a tour or something, and we met a couple other people who are about our age who were also Japanese. And they talked about their trip and their travels and just they chatted and made small talk with my friend. And not once did anybody ask, what do you do? Where are you from? What's your name? Which I think a lot of Americans would ask those questions right off the bat. And I was pretty surprised by that.
So, asking personal questions, you got to ease into that. You got to establish a rapport first before you
Yeah,
start
people
asking
can be
about
guarded.
who they are. Interesting. So, speaking about Japan, I know you've been there for 14 years.
Mhm.
Why did you go there from Michigan to begin with? What was your plan?
I had studied Japanese when I was in college and spent a semester here. I always thought maybe someday I'll try the teaching English in Japan thing, and years passed and I didn't get around to it. Finally, I got around to it. And my plan was to stay 1 year and make a little bit of money and write a book. I had this idea that I would just write a book in a year and then go back to America and pick up my life where I left off, but it didn't happen.
Why did you end up staying?
A few things changed in my life around that time, and it was a hard decision that first year, especially. I just didn't feel like I was ready to start over again so soon. It was when I that first year was rough. I couldn't really speak Japanese. I felt like a toddler. Like I
Mm.
things that are very obvious to people who have grown up here, I didn't understand how to do them or how things worked. I was working in an elementary school and I related very strongly to my first graders and second graders because we had similar levels of Japanese and I felt like we were learning how to do all this together. Yeah, second year was amazing. Definitely, I would recommend anybody who does this consider staying a second year. I got to travel the length of Japan and I started to enjoy my work a lot more, although I was asked to do some unexpected things. Like one year I had to learn how to play the drum set and I was in
See.
a few local commercials. Yeah, lots
Whoa,
of
okay.
unexpected
All right.
performances happened.
There's several things to unpack there. One, okay, the drum thing, like, why did you have to learn it? And then how were you in commercials?
Okay, let's start with the drum set. The teachers at the elementary school where I worked were preparing a performance for the graduating students to perform at a kind of lunch party that they did after the graduation ceremony. And the parents did something, and the kids all did some kind of little song or dance or something. That was our kind of send off for them. And my brother played the drum set, so I was interested in giving that a try. So I practiced a lot, and I learned that it's a lot easier to play drums in high heels, which was unexpected.
Easier in the foot in high heels.
Yeah, when you use the pedal for the bass drum,
Okay, because
that
you're
little
already up.
cushion. Yeah, it's a lot easier that
That's
way.
funny.
Yes.
That's great.
And
Okay, so what about the commercial?
the commercials where there's an event that they do in this prefecture. I think one of the television stations sponsors it. All of the cities and towns and villages are invited to make a commercial promoting their city or town or village. Then they have a contest, and the winning commercial gets aired a certain number of times, and there's several levels of prizes. But as the local non-Japanese person, they enjoyed putting me in there a few times just for novelty, I think.
Your prefecture, like your area, your city won, and that's why it got viewed so many times.
We did not win,
Oh,
no. But it was still on TV occasionally, so I would
that's fabulous.
avoid
What
watching if I could.
what did your family think of watching those commercials with you in them?
Yeah, I don't think I ever showed them. I don't think I ever
What?
caught that on video. I wasn't particularly proud of my performance.
Oh my gosh, that would be my opener of every conversation for 2 years. By the way, I was in a commercial. You should check it out. What kind of experiences did you go through? Like you said, the first year was rough as you were trying to adapt to some ways of life that locals would know. We're totally not locals listening here. Just tell us about some of those things that you learned that you went through.
Grocery stores are a little different everywhere. When I first touched down in this prefecture, the entire Board of Education picked me up from the airport and took me to the grocery store. So it was a very surreal experience grocery shopping with my boss and her boss and their boss and without
Wow.
even having seen my apartment first. So I don't know. I don't know what I need or what anything is really. So that was memorable. And let's see, one of my first big earthquakes was March 11th, 2011, which was an especially big earthquake. That was the one that caused the giant tsunami and the nuclear power plant issue and everything. And but at the time, the electricity went out. And so I didn't see the news. I didn't know what was happening, and everything was very routine. Everyone was very calm, and I just assumed that they do this all the time. They occasionally evacuate to the community center and everybody has a slumber party. And it wasn't until the next day when the power came back on and I saw the news and everybody looking for me and wondering if I was okay that I realized that wasn't, standard procedure necessarily.
I would imagine coming from Michigan because we've got tornadoes, but
Yeah.
honestly, our natural weather scare level is very small. So
Yes.
I can only imagine your first earthquake and it being a biggie, you had to have
Yeah.
freaked out.
Nobody else was freaked out. I guess I was thinking of it as an interesting cultural experience because it wasn't my very first earthquake, but it was maybe my third one, and I'd been there several months so far. I just remember journaling about it and hearing the sirens because there was a tsunami alarm on the village announcement, and just thinking about how surreal and strange it all was, but it didn't. Yeah, I was probably a little freaked out in hindsight, but everyone else was so calm, and even after we went back to work on Monday, I think if I was at a workplace in America, we would all be talking about it and, I don't know, hugging each other, and that would be
Right.
the main topic of conversation, but that I didn't see any of that. Everybody was just going about their business, very calm.
Can't even imagine living someplace, but they're like, "Yeah, we just had this major earthquake and all this stuff's going, whatever. It's no biggie." I can imagine people in California might be that way, but I sure as hell
Yeah,
wouldn't.
and I don't think people actually thought it was no big deal, but they just put on this there's no sense in freaking out and panicking about it. They just tried to stay calm.
Do you have any other just exciting stories about Japan and some of your experiences, things you tell your friends and family about the country?
People in general are very gracious and kind around the village. I live in a small village, fishing and farming village, and I would be walking down the street and pass some older woman who would hand me a bag of potatoes or something, and I've been taking for full days of out for a full day of sightseeing by people that I met once. People have been very kind and generous and welcoming. I had
That's
a
so
great time.
nice.
Yeah, yeah.
I can't imagine walking down the street and somebody comes up, shoves a bag of potatoes in my hands. Here you go.
They may have been
You're like,
cucumbers or eggplants, I can't remember, but when cucumbers are in season, you get a lot of cucumbers, so people are pretty generous with cucumbers. Had a great time traveling around Japan after that first year. I took a train. There's a special ticket you can buy where it's very cheap, but you can only take local trains. So I traveled from the tip of the main island, the northern tip, down to I think I went as far as Kobe, which is pretty far southwest from here. It's about maybe three-quarters of the way to the other end of Japan. And I think it was over the course of 5 days, and I think that was my second year. My Japanese still wasn't very great wasn't great, and there were a few moments where I was afraid I was going to get stranded in a rice field in the middle of nowhere where there was nothing around if I miscalculated the train schedule, but I had a great time. I went by myself. I listened to audiobooks and spent way more on hotels than I did on the train ticket, but it was worth it. And then from there, I met my friend, my college roommate, who lives in that area, and her parents drove us down all the way down to the bottom tip of the main island to visit her family, and I just tagged along on their family get together. But it was amazing seeing the whole country that way. I also went to Hokkaido and Okinawa that year, islands on either end, and it was a great experience.
are lights pretty cheap between the islands, or
No,
is it okay?
it's usually cheaper to just go to another country.
Please.
It can be, but the bullet train is also not cheap, but it's really convenient and fast. I love taking the train.
Okay, so you've done the bullet train.
Yes, many times.
Wow, what does it feel like going that fast?
It just doesn't really feel like you're going that fast. You're just on a train, and
Kind of like being on a car. You just
you're in
go.
tunnels a lot, so you can't really see what's going on outside. It feels a bit like an airplane, but not as bumpy, and I don't like airplanes, so I'm a lot calmer on the train.
You're a long way from home to not like planes.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Is there destination, a place that you love best, you'd recommend people to go to?
In Japan, I am partial to Aomori, which is where I live. It's a beautiful northern countryside kind of place, a lot of mountains and evergreen trees and beautiful coastlines, good food. It's not really an easy place to visit. You need a car to get around and see a lot of the sights, but it's really beautiful. And we have some really exciting festivals in the summer that draw a lot of people, very colorful and
What are the
loud.
festivals?
The biggest one is called the Nebuta Festival, and it's basically a parade with these giant lanterns made of paper and wire, and they have lights inside, and they're hand painted to look like characters from old stories, old Japanese fairy tales and historical stories. They are pulled through the city, accompanied by drums and flutes and cymbals, and dancers wearing these wild hats with all of these colorful metallic flowers and and it's very exciting and fun to watch.
How big are you talking about when you say giant lanterns? Like, how many feet would you say they are approximately?
Oh,
As big as a person? Or were you
oh,
talking
they're
like
much
three
bigger than
feet?
a person. Yeah, it's like a parade float, like a big parade float, like a
Okay,
um,
so they're
not like
big.
Macy's Day Thanksgiving kind of thing, but like a normal parade float, like a homecoming parade, like maybe a little bigger than that.
So like maybe 8, 10 feet.
Maybe a little bigger. They're on a
Okay.
platform, yeah. And there's a
Okay.
similar festival in another city nearby that does do very tall versions that are 2 or 3 stories tall, and that's very
Oh,
impressive to watch, yeah.
2 or 3 story tall lantern. Holy crap.
Amazing. Mhm.
I want to see pictures of this. So cool.
It's pretty dramatic and exciting.
What is something that is common in Japan that's just very Japanese that America needs to adopt? Like, we are missing out on this.
Convenience stores. Japanese convenience stores are such a source of comfort for me. Yeah, we have 7-Eleven and Lawson's, which I think was originally an American convenience store also, and a couple other brands. There used to be Circle K, but they all turned into a different company, but they're everywhere and they're open 24 hours and they are just so convenient. It's not an American convenience store where you might get like a Slurpee and a hot dog or something like that. They have everything that you need pretty much. You can get a decent lunch, you can get a t-shirt if you need a t-shirt. They're just
So it's like a mini Myers.
yeah, I like a very mini Myers. And I do miss Myers. I miss superstores too, in a way that I never thought I would.
If
But
you come home, you're like, the first thing, I want to go to Myers.
it is actually, yeah. I don't think I've ever come home without going to Myers. I took my husband to Myers when we came home. I don't think he was as impressed as I thought he should be, but
It's just a big convenience store.
yes, but the aisles are so wide.
So we need to have more of these little convenience stores. Let's talk about your book.
Okay.
What is it about? So imagine somebody knows nothing about this book. Tell them about it.
Okay. My book, Clueless at the Coffee Station, is a cozy mystery about a barista who wants to figure out who stole the local art from the coffee shop during open mic night while she was working. And she needs to figure that out before her boss closes the coffee shop and sells it to a real estate developer. So that's the plot.
Excellent. Betty's such a fun character, and the coffee shop is adorable. I would love to have you read an excerpt from your book, if you would.
This is from chapter 1. The coffee station, a small brick building that was a service station in a past life, is wedged between the railroad tracks and a column of signs guiding cars to the freeways. It has barely changed since it opened in 1993. The menu is impervious to ideas good and bad, to pizza and pour over alike. The furniture is mismatched, the wood floor is scuffed beyond hope, and lavender snippets grow roots in jars along the drafty windows. The whole situation is brought to the brink of collapse by passing trains about 100 times a day. It's one of the coolest places in the city, which might say more about the city than the cafe. I never thought I'd be a barista here at age 27, but it's fine. My hometown is a mid-sized Michigan city with Rust Belt problems and a cute downtown shopping district. I walk to work as the leaves along Main Street turn scarlet. Every day smells like coffee and cinnamon. I wear vintage aprons and bake muffins. If it weren't for open mic night, my life would be almost completely charming.
At Mike Night. I laugh through so many parts about this running theme of the open mic night and what a bane to her existence it is.
Yeah,
That's
Betty.
definitely one of the best parts. So you're writing about coffee shop. I want to know, what's your favorite coffee drink?
My favorite coffee drink these days, the one I usually go to, it's very simple. It's a latte with 3 shots of espresso.
In your book, and I can't remember what the drink exactly was, and this just stood out to me. The extra dry something? Like, what was that?
Or extra dry cappuccino is the drink that one of the characters orders, and that sticks out to Betty because it's an unusual drink. Most people don't describe their cappuccinos as dry, which means more foam than milk, more milk foam. And a wet cappuccino has more steamed milk than foamy milk. So the extra dry cappuccino would be pretty much all foam. So if you picked up the cup, it's light as air basically. And espresso, of course. But that was a real coffee order for a customer that I had once, and I just stole it for my book.
Okay, I was wondering like where this came from. I'm like, who the heck would order a cup of foam?
The character in my book rides a bike, so keeps it from spilling, I think. But the real life person, I have no idea what he was thinking.
I'm like, I understood. Okay, the bike, it did make sense. I had to know. There has got to be somebody who actually ordered this for you to put that in there because I've never heard of that. Are there any other like strange, bizarre coffee drinks people have ordered?
I think most of the memorable ones I have recycled in my book. There was somebody who always wanted an equal in the bottom. For some reason, I don't know, maybe it dissolved better if we put it in the bottom, but everybody has their little quirk, that thing they want it extra hot or not so hot, or yeah, I think the
Now,
extra dry cappuccino was the most unique.
in your book, Betty knows a lot of the customers by their drink order. Like she doesn't know
Yes.
their name, their peppermint latte or whatever. Did you do that when you were a barista?
Oh, yes, very much. Real life people vary their orders a little bit more than maybe the characters in my book do, but yeah, I'm not very good with names and especially customer names. It's not that I don't care necessarily, but I didn't usually chat about personal stuff with the customers. And I had coworkers who did, and they would know everybody's name and their professions and all kinds of stuff. But I usually just remembered people by their coffee orders. People usually like that when you get the coffee order right. So that was enough for
Right.
me.
Yeah, for the customer, I'd almost imagine it's more important that you know my order than my name.
Yeah, for me, I would feel a little strange if my baristas called me by name, I think.
How did you end up writing a mystery? Because I don't think you started that way.
Not exactly. There was always an element of mystery in there. I started reading Nancy Drew books in my 20s, and I always really liked the idea of mysteries. And I was into the Number One Ladies detective agency books for a while, and I read some classic Agatha Christie and Sherlock Holmes and stuff. And I liked the idea of cozy mysteries too, but I never really read any when I was younger. They looked like they were meant for somebody else, and I don't know, I just never really picked them up off the shelf, and which is too bad. But when I started writing this book, I wanted her to be trying to solve a mystery because I just was stuck on that idea. But the story as a whole was more of a general kind of women's fiction kind of story or a coming of age kind of story. I wanted to write a story about a young woman who was figuring out her path in life because at that time I was felt like I was just finally figuring out my path in life. So I wanted to tell a similar story. And then over several drafts, I realized it should probably be a mystery. And I read more mysteries and learned how to structure that and just restructured it so that the mystery was the scaffolding of the internal story.
How hard was that to take this women's fiction and then turn it into the cozy mystery style? Was that easy for you, or did you find you had to rework a lot of things?
I probably should have just started from scratch, but I couldn't bring myself to do that. Yeah, I had to rework a lot of things. There were I think it was a necessary process because there was a lot in the story that didn't really need to be there. I don't think I knew exactly what story I was telling when I first started writing. It's much better for that revision, but yeah, I probably should have just started writing from scratch. That would have been simpler.
I know some people who do that. Like they're making edits and they've got a lot of restructure and they start from the beginning. And that just sounds too daunting to me. It may
Yeah.
be faster and maybe one day I'll get there, but I'm not there now. I'm like, okay, can I do this? Can I make these level of changes? The more you do it, the better you get at it.
I agree. I think I needed to rewrite that book several times before it finally was where it needed to be.
Where can people find your book?
It's on Amazon in paperback and ebook, and it's also available on Barnes and Noble and Kobo and several other places in ebook. So I haven't put it on Google Play, but I think it's pretty much everywhere else. It's on Apple as well.
I'm going to have
And
a link
okay.
in the episode notes that will take you guys to Amazon's link if that's the one you want, or you can go to Barnes. But I'm going to just put the Amazon link in there for listeners. So if you want to go check that out, I will make that easy for you. So what is next?
Right now I'm working on the sequel, the second book in the series. It's a murder mystery, and it's been a much easier process writing it. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun to work at, and I'm excited to share that hopefully maybe this winter or spring.
Excellent. I'm excited to read the next in the series. What is a comfort read for you? What is something that you go back and you read multiple times to just if you're in distress or I don't know, just this is your comfort and you go back to it?
There are not very many books I read more than once. When I was younger, I loved The Secret Garden, so I read that a few times.
I just
But
read that as an adult a few years ago. And actually I had it on audiobook. Freaking good. Oh my gosh. I'm so late to the game. And I've seen some versions of it, so I knew what to expect. But I'm
yeah,
like, wow.
yeah, I haven't read it in years, but I really enjoyed it when I was younger. I think for me, I would go back to an author that whose work I enjoy. Depends on my mood. I could read a Agatha Christie mystery, or I love Jessie Q. Sutanto. She wrote the Dial A for Aunties book, and it's very funny, and I really enjoy her writing. I'll often go back to hers. She also wrote Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers.
I've never heard of it, but I love that title. B, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. I've loved hearing your stories and learning more about you. I can't wait for the next book. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really nice talking to you.
Have you been in a commercial? Are you a secret garden lover? Or do you have a Japan story you want to share? Write your thoughts in the comments section for this episode on my website. Links in the notes as usual. Plus, links for B. Arigato for staying till the end. You are the greatest podcast listener in the world. How are you? Is life a pleasant afternoon stroll for you? Or did you trip and find yourself tumbling down a hill? In either case, remember, I care. Tell yourself you are special, worthy of love, and then go tell someone else. Until next time, I wish you well.